Have you ever wondered why, the moment you stop reaching out, they suddenly start thinking about you more? Why no contact seems to get under their skin in ways constant communication never could? It's not just about silence, it's about what that silence screams to them. When you pull back, you create scarcity. You go from being someone they took for granted to someone whose presence feels rare and valuable. And that alone starts to gnaw at them. They're no longer in control of the dynamic. The texts, the calls, the little reassurances they unconsciously relied on, they're gone. And that loss of control makes them restless. Their ego, which expected you to chase, suddenly takes a hit. But here's where it gets even more interesting. You've become a mystery. They don't know what you're thinking, who you're seeing, or if you even care anymore. That unknown is addictive, and it forces them to sit with feelings they thought they'd buried. Because when they realize you don't need them, when they see you thriving without their validation, it shakes them to their core. That's when they start asking themselves, did I lose something I'll never get back? And that's exactly why no contact drives them crazy. When you pull away and go no contact, something fascinating happens in the mind of the person on the other side. It's not just that they notice your absence. They feel it. At first, it might not hit them immediately because they're still caught up in their own world, convinced they've got all the time in the world to reach out if they ever wanted to. But as the days pass and the silence stretches on, they start to sense a shift. The attention they used to take for granted, the messages, the phone calls, the check-ins, they're all gone. And that's where the scarcity begins to do its work. You see, we as humans have this strange wiring in our psychology. We tend to undervalue what feels abundant and overvalue what feels scarce. When something is readily available, we don't feel urgency around it. But the moment it disappears, suddenly we notice the space it used to occupy in our lives. That's exactly what happens when you stop reaching out. Your presence, your energy, and your time all gain weight in their mind because they're no longer able to access it freely. At first, they might tell themselves they don't care. They might even act unbothered on the surface, but underneath, there's this little itch growing in their mind. Why haven't you called? Why haven't you texted? Why aren't you showing up the way you used to? That question starts quietly, but over time, it becomes louder. Scarcity creates focus, it creates value. And when someone is denied the thing they've been conditioned to expect, they start to want it more. Not because you're playing games, but because you've broken the pattern they were relying on. It's important to understand that this isn't about manipulation. It's about creating space so they can recognize what your presence actually meant in their life. When you were always there, they didn't have to work for your attention. They didn't have to think about whether they appreciated it or not. But now, with silence hanging in the air, they're left to feel the difference. And that difference can be shocking. Think about it like this. Imagine your favorite song playing on repeat. At first, you're thrilled to hear it, but after a while, you barely notice it's there. You start singing along without thinking. But if the music suddenly stopped mid-verse, you'd instantly notice the silence. You'd crave that melody again because it's no longer flooding your senses. That's the power of absence. It's in the gap you leave that they begin to remember how much they enjoyed your song in the first place. Now, this doesn't guarantee they'll come running back right away. People process these things differently. Some will try to fill the void with distractions. Others will attempt to convince themselves they're fine without you. So, with all due respect, once again, we begin to convince themselves they're fine without you. But here's the truth. They're noticing. Even if they don't say it out loud, the energy has shifted. And that shift creates curiosity. It creates the pull that makes them think, wait a second, why do I feel this way? Why am I suddenly so aware of their absence? That's the beauty of giving space. It allows the other person to sit with themselves and ask questions they never had to consider before. And in that space, the seed of value grows. Not because you're trying to make them chase, but because they're finally waking up to the reality that your time and love aren't limitless resources. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to push harder or try to prove your worth. It's to step back, create scarcity, and let them feel the true weight of what they're missing. Spencer Rubin, CEO of PMO Consulting. He says, "We feel the true weight of what they're missing." Think about this for a second. When someone has been used to having access to you, your time, your energy, your responses, they begin to take that access for granted. It's like having the key to a door they can open anytime they want. And when that door suddenly locks, when they reach for the handle and realize it's no longer turning, something happens in their mind. It's not just about missing you, it's about losing the control they thought they had. That's what really starts to drive them crazy. You see, we all crave a sense of certainty in our lives. When we know someone is there for us, when they answer our texts, pick up our calls, or give us attention, we feel this quiet reassurance. Even if we're not actively thinking about it, it creates a sense of stability. But take that away, and suddenly the ground feels shaky beneath their feet. The brain starts to go into overdrive, asking questions it didn't need to ask before. Why aren't they responding? Why haven't they reached out? Have they moved on? Are they seeing someone else? That loss of control creates a kind of inner chaos, and the more they try to figure it out, the more they realize they don't have the answers. That's where the frustration and even obsession starts to grow. There's something about human nature that doesn't like to be left hanging. We like to believe we can predict people, especially people we were once close to. If they expected you to reach out, to check in, to keep the connection alive, and then you don't, you've disrupted their pattern. And disrupting someone's pattern is one of the fastest ways to get their attention. It's like their mind keeps trying to close a loop that you've intentionally left open. That's why they keep checking their phone, wondering if you'll break the silence. That's why they replay old conversations in their head, looking for clues about what you're thinking. And here's what's even more powerful. This isn't just about you being unavailable. It's about you taking your power back. When you stop feeding into their sense of control, you're sending a quiet but strong message. You're saying, "I'm not here to soothe your ego. I'm not here to make you feel comfortable while I feel anxious. I'm not here to give you access to me on your terms anymore." That shift is jarring for them because they were counting on you to play the same role you always did, but the moment you break that dynamic, they're forced to feel the discomfort they'd been shielding themselves from. This is a thing most people don't realize. Even if they ended things with you, they often assumed they could still have little pieces of you whenever they wanted. A text here, a late night call there, the reassurance that if they felt lonely or unsure, you'd still be there. But when you go no contact, you cut off that supply. You stop giving them the emotional access they thought they could count on. And for someone who's used to feeling like they have you on standby, that's not just inconvenient, it's disorienting. Now, let's be clear. The goal here isn't to play games or punish anyone. It's about breaking a cycle where you were the one giving and they were the one taking. It's about creating space for them to actually feel the weight of their decisions. Sometimes people need that silence to wake up. They need to feel the loss of control so they can ask themselves, wait, what did I have here? Did I underestimate them? Did I mistake their presence for permanence? What's fascinating is that this loss of control doesn't just frustrate them, It forces them to reflect. In the beginning, they might get angry. They might tell themselves stories like, they're just trying to make me miss them. They'll cave soon. But as time passes and you stay consistent, that anger often turns into curiosity, then into doubt, and finally into realization. That realization is powerful because it's no longer about control, it's about value. They begin to see your absence as a mirror, showing them how much space you actually occupied in their life. Here's what you have to remember. If you want someone to respect your boundaries and see your worth, you have to be willing to remove yourself from situations where they felt in control of your emotions. No contact isn't about being cold or manipulative. It's about refusing to let someone hold on to you loosely while you hold on to them tightly. That imbalance is what created the dynamic in the first place. And the only way to reset that dynamic is to take a step back completely. They may not admit it out loud. They may not even show you right away. But trust me, when someone loses the control they once had over you, it creates a ripple effect in their mind. Suddenly, they're the one wondering, doubting, questioning, and in that silence, they're left to wrestle with one haunting thought. What if I can't get them back this time? If I can't get them back this time? And that's when everything changes. You know what's fascinating? For so many people, their ego is the thing that drives them long before their heart ever does. They may have been the one to leave. They may have been the one to say, this isn't working for me anymore. And yet in the back of their mind, there's a little voice saying, but they'll still be there. They'll still answer my texts. They'll still pick up the phone if I call. They'll still want me. It's almost an unspoken expectation. So when you go no contact, something starts to shift in them. At first, they may not even notice. A few days go by and they assume you're just giving them a bit of space. But as the silence stretches on, a question creeps into their mind. Wait, why haven't they reached out yet? This isn't about love yet. This is about ego. You see, their ego was used to a certain pattern, and the certain ego is always thinking about the part it was used to, the validation you provided. The little dopamine hits every time you texted them. The reassurance that even if they walked away, they were still wanted. When you stop feeding that ego, they start to feel uncomfortable. Not because they've suddenly realized they're madly in love, but because you've interrupted the emotional supply they were getting from you. And here's the key thing. This discomfort doesn't feel logical to them. It's not something they can easily articulate. They might not sit there and say, I miss their validation. Instead, it comes out in irritation, in restlessness, in an inexplicable desire to check your social media or send you a casual, hey, how have you been? Text just to see if you'll bite. It's their ego wanting to know, do I still matter to you? Am I still important? Could I still have you if I wanted to? Do I still have you if I wanted to? What you need to understand is that as long as you were in contact, they never had to confront these questions. They never had to doubt their place in your life. Even if they weren't giving you the commitment or effort you deserved, they still felt like they had you in their orbit. That sense of security allowed them to stay complacent. But now you've taken that away. Now they're left with a silence they didn't expect. And in that silence, they start to wonder, not just about you, but about themselves. Why do I feel so off balance? Why does it bother me so much that they're not texting? Why am I even thinking about this? That inner dialogue is their ego wrestling with the fact that you're no longer propping it up. Here's what's really powerful. This ego discomfort can often be the spark that wakes someone up. Because at first, they're only trying to soothe their own pride. They're trying to see if they still have access to you. But the longer you stay quiet, the more that spark grows into something deeper. Suddenly, they're not just missing the validation, they're missing you. They're missing the connection, the energy, the person who brought light into their life. And that's why no contact can feel so maddening to someone who expected you to always be there. It's not about playing games. It's about showing through your actions that their access to you was never guaranteed. That if they want to be part of your life, they have to earn that space. Because you're not sitting around waiting for breadcrumbs. This is the moment where the dynamic flips. Because when someone's ego is bruised enough, they're forced to make a choice. They can either double down on their pride and walk away, or they can drop the facade and admit, I actually care more than I realized. But here's the beautiful part. No matter what they choose, you've already won because you've reclaimed your power. You've stopped feeding an ego that wasn't serving you, and you've created the space for someone to either step up fully or step aside so you can make room for something better. So remember this, their ego missing you is not the same as their heart missing you. But sometimes it's the first step toward them realizing what they truly feel. And if they do come back, it won't be because you begged or chased. It will be because they couldn't stand the thought of losing someone who had the courage to walk away and mean it. You know what's fascinating about stepping back and going no contact? It's the mystery you create. And I don't mean some manipulative game where you're trying to make someone wonder about you. I'm talking about the very natural curiosity that fills the space when someone used to hearing from you suddenly isn't. When you were constantly available, they had the luxury of knowing exactly where you stood, how you felt, and what you were doing. You were an open book. Every message, every like, every call, every little just checking in filled in the gaps in their mind about you. There was no room for uncertainty because you were supplying them with all the answers. But when you step away, something really powerful happens. That stream of information stops. The updates stop. The reassurance stops. And suddenly, instead of feeling in control, they're left with a vacuum. And you know what human beings hate more than anything? A vacuum. We are addicted to certainty. We crave knowing. And when we don't know, we fill in the blanks, usually with stories that drive us insane. They start asking themselves questions they never bothered to ask before. What are you doing right now? Are you at home missing me? Or are you out there laughing with someone new? Do you still think about me when you wake up in the morning? And when do you stop thinking about me when you wake up in the morning? Or have you completely moved on? These questions don't stay quiet. They repeat like an echo in their mind, growing louder every time they scroll past your name or see a picture that reminds them of you. And here's the ironic part. The less you give them, the more they want to know. That's how desire works. People think desire comes from being showered with attention, but it doesn't. It comes from space. It comes from curiosity. It comes from wondering, what's going on in their world without me? When you pull back, you stop feeding them certainty. You stop giving them the comfort of knowing you're still there, still thinking about them, still waiting in the wings. And that discomfort is what drives them crazy. Think about it like this. When they knew they could text you and get an instant reply, they felt secure. They could take their time. There was no urgency because your presence felt guaranteed. But the moment you remove that certainty, you introduce doubt. And doubt is powerful. Doubt makes them question things they never questioned before. Were they really ready to let you go? Did they underestimate what you brought to their life? Was this really what they wanted? And while they're sitting there wrestling with these thoughts, there's another layer to this. The fact that they can't see what's happening with you means their mind fills in the gaps with possibilities. And because we're human, and humans are emotional creatures, those possibilities are rarely neutral. Instead of imagining you sitting alone waiting for their return, their brain starts to envision you smiling, glowing, and living your best life. They imagine someone else noticing you, someone else laughing at your jokes, someone else holding the place they once held. Even if they don't say it out loud, those images sting. They create an urgency in them that they didn't feel before. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to manufacture any of this. You don't have to play games or pretend to be someone you're not. Simply by stepping back, you create space for them to feel your absence. You allow them to feel the weight of losing your energy, your laughter, your presence. And in that silence, they're left to wonder, not because you're trying to punish them, but because you've simply decided to focus on yourself and stop handing them the comfort they never earned. This is why no contact is so powerful. It gives them the chance to miss you. And don't underestimate how loud that silence can be in someone's life. When they're used to you being there, filling the gaps, and suddenly you're not, it's like walking into a room where the music has stopped. They notice. Even if they don't reach out right away, even if their ego tries to keep them still, inside they feel it. That mystery you create, it's not about being manipulative. It's about giving them the rare opportunity to realize that access to you was never guaranteed, that your presence was a privilege, not a right. And if they're ever going to see your worth, it's going to be in that space you leave behind, not in the messages you send to remind them of it. If you don't reach them, it's going to be in that space you leave behind, not in the messages you send to remind them of it. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to let the silence speak for you. You know what happens when you pull away and go completely silent? It's not just that they notice you're gone. It's that they're forced to sit alone with thoughts they've been trying to avoid. As long as you were there, even in small ways, liking their posts, replying to their texts, reaching out every so often, they didn't really have to confront the depth of what they were feeling. You were a safety net. You were this soft landing they could always fall back on, even if they didn't admit it out loud. But when you cut off contact, when you disappear from their world completely, they're left with only themselves. And that silence is deafening. At first, they might tell themselves, "It's fine, I needed this space anyway. I wanted this." But as the hours turn into days and the days into weeks, that confidence starts to crumble, because in the stillness, all the emotions they pushed aside start bubbling up. Now they're asking themselves questions they didn't want to face. Why haven't I heard from them? Are they over me? Were they ever really that invested? Did I make a mistake? They didn't want to think about you this way. They didn't want to analyze their feelings. They wanted to keep their heart in a safe little box where they didn't have to feel anything too deeply. But your silence ripped the lid off that box. See, most people think no contact is about playing games or punishing the other person. It's not. It's about giving them the space to realize for themselves what you meant to them. And here's the truth. People don't miss what they're constantly reminded is still there. They miss what feels absent, what feels like it might be slipping away. Your absence forces them into emotional territory they've been avoiding. As long as you're present, even if it's just an occasional text, you're making it easy for them to stay comfortable. They don't have to process any grief. They don't have to think about the possibility that you're moving on. They don't have to feel the ache of losing you, because you haven't really gone anywhere. But when you step back fully, you create a vacuum. And nature hates a vacuum. Their mind starts filling it with fear, longing, curiosity. Are you thinking about me? Do you even care anymore? Are you talking to someone else? Have you already replaced me? Those thoughts creep in late at night when they're staring at the ceiling, wondering why it suddenly feels so quiet without you. Here's the irony. When they first pulled away, they probably thought they were in control. They assumed they had all the power because they made the choice to step back, or to end things, or to take space. But now, as the days go on and your silence stretches longer, they're realizing that power was an illusion. Because you can't feel in control when your emotions are spiraling, when you're checking your phone every few minutes, hoping to see a message that never comes. And this is where the shift happens. In the beginning, they were fine because they weren't really dealing with the weight of losing you, but now they're starting to feel it, like a delayed reaction, and it's hitting harder because there's no distraction, no comfort from knowing you're still there. The silence forces them to look inward and ask themselves, did I take this person for granted? Did I assume they would always be waiting for me? That's the beauty of pulling back. It creates a space where their feelings have room to breathe, where they can't run from the truth anymore. The ones who care, the ones who still have feelings for you, they're the ones who will start to crack under the weight of that silence. They'll start to question their decisions. They'll start to replay moments with you in their head, wishing they'd said something different, wishing they'd done something more. This isn't about manipulating anyone. It's about giving them the gift of clarity, the kind of clarity they'll never get if you're constantly in their face trying to remind them of your worth. Your absence speaks louder than any words you could say. And the longer they sit in that silence, the louder it gets for them. It echoes in their mind and makes them realize what they were too distracted or too proud to feel before, that you were never the one they needed space from. You were the one they needed to hold on to, because silence isn't just quiet, it's a mirror. And in that mirror, they finally see what life looks like without you in it. And that's when it hits them. When you step back and go silent, something unexpected happens. Not just for them, but for you too. You begin to communicate something powerful without even saying a word. You show them that you don't need them. And let me tell you, that realization alone can be enough to completely turn the tables in a situation. Because here's the truth. Most people operate under the assumption that if they withdraw, you'll reach for them. Do you reach for them? They assume they've left you in a state of waiting, of hoping, of longing for crumbs of attention. But when you don't reach out, when you don't beg for their time, when you don't send that late night, "I miss you" text, you send a message far louder than any words ever could. I am not dependent on you for my happiness. And that shakes them. It shakes them because people expect to be the center of someone's emotional world long after they've walked out of their life. They expect their absence to create chaos in you, not calm. So when you choose calm, when you choose stillness instead of chasing, they begin to feel something they didn't prepare for. They feel unimportant. They feel replaceable. It's not that you're playing a game. It's not about pretending you don't care or forcing some cold facade. It's about showing through action that your worth was never tied to them in the first place. It's about showing through action that your worth was never tied to them in the first place. Because the moment they feel like you're doing fine without them, It disrupts their entire perception of how this dynamic was supposed to play out. They thought they were the one in control. They thought they held the power to decide when and how the connection continues. But no contact flips that script. Think about how people behave when they know someone is waiting for them. They drag their feet, they delay, they test boundaries. Why? Because on some level, they believe they're still wanted. But remove that belief, remove their certainty that you're still there waiting, and watch how quickly they spiral. Watch how fast they go from calm and collected to restless and curious. The moment you stop showing up for them, they're forced to ask themselves questions they've been avoiding. Was I really that important to them? If they can move on so easily, did they ever even care? Have they replaced me already? Am I the one who's been left behind? And those questions aren't just passing thoughts. They become intrusive. They linger. Because suddenly, they're not dealing with the version of you they were used to. They're not dealing with the person who was always available, always ready to forgive, always ready to keep the connection alive. They're dealing with someone who is living, breathing, and growing without them. And that is both fascinating and terrifying to them. You see, there's something magnetic about someone who doesn't need you. Neediness repels. Independence attracts. When they sense you've detached, when they sense you've reclaimed your time, your energy, your heart, it makes them question what they lost. It makes them wonder what's changed in you and why they're suddenly not the center of it anymore. It's not even about revenge or trying to make them suffer. This isn't about punishing them. This is about showing them by stepping into your own power that your life is whole, with or without their presence, to know that you are still in control, that you are still the center of your own life, that your life is whole, with or without their presence. That's what gets under their skin. Not anger, not resentment, but your quiet strength, your ability to continue living, to laugh, to grow, to even fall in love again if you choose to. That's what stirs something deep inside them. And here's the ironic part. The less you try to prove your worth to them, the more they begin to see it. The less you chase their validation, the more they crave yours. When you stop reaching out, they begin to realize how much they miss your energy, right? They miss the comfort of your words, the certainty of your presence, the way you made them feel significant. And now they're left wondering if they ever truly mattered to you, or if you've evolved to a point where they no longer fit into the picture. That's the power of no contact. It gives you space to heal. It gives them space to reflect. And in that space, they often find the very thing they didn't expect to feel: longing. Because nothing drives someone crazier than realizing the person they thought needed them doesn't. So let them feel it. Don't reach out to make them comfortable again. Don't rush to soothe their ego. Hold your ground. Show them that your value was never tied to their recognition of it. Because the moment you stop needing them, they'll start needing you in ways they can't even explain.